Still morning, right? My name is Michal Horný. I'm a doctoral student here at Boston University. And I'm going to talk about this activity that, in my opinion, I hope, improves retention and comprehension of difficult abstract concepts that we teach in health economics. And before I get into that, I would like to quickly acknowledge Jim Burgess as well. Jim had been my advisor for 5 years and taught me a lot. And I probably wouldn't be standing here without him. So thank you, Jim. Okay, so we can start now. You may be wondering why, what a student is actually doing here, right? At a session about teaching health economics. I'm surprised as well. Whoever selected my presentation, thank you. I teach. I actually do teach Introduction to Cost-Effectiveness Analysis to graduate students at the School of Public Health. And I usually get a group of students with a variety or like a spectrum of backgrounds. There are some that are really good technical students, like they have strong background in statistics, econometrics. They're very likely much better than I am. But there are students who just didn't really, maybe passed Introduction to Biostats, but didn't really get what that was about. And that's fine. That's fine. That happens. I noticed in my teaching that there is this inherent disconnect between teachers and students. The thing is that if you teach a course, there are good chances that you probably understand the concepts. And students often don't. And sometimes it's difficult for the teacher to actually see what the students don't understand, because something can be crystal clear to you, but may not be as clear to the students. And this is especially the case for difficult abstract concepts. I forgot to click on this. One of those difficult concepts is, for example, probabilistic sensitivity analysis, or simulation in general. I found this description in a textbook. I'll just read it. So probabilistic sensitivity analysis is a simulation procedure in which all input parameters are considered as random quantities and therefore are associated with probability distributions that describe the background knowledge of the decision maker. And if you know what this is about, it makes sense. But if you don't, then it's just like a black box. So essentially, you click on something on the computer and it gives you some numbers, which you may or may not understand what they actually mean. Therefore, I developed an in-class activity to convey the concept in a little bit more tangible way than a description like this. Because what I think and believe that concepts that are actually that are memorized rather than comprehended are not retained over time. And I don't want to get into philosophy of teaching, maybe you just want students to pass the course, but I hope that we all try to teach students the concepts so that they remember what the concept is about. Okay, so what do you need for this activity I'm proposing? You need a large open space. So if you got a classroom like this, you would be screwed. You would have to ask for a different one, at least for this one class. You need a simple decision problem. So this is just one part of the problem. I'm using this very simple made-up problem about whether we should provide vaccination against flu. So this is the no vaccination arm, and it essentially means there are some chances of you getting flu. If you get a flu, it can be bad and you get in a hospital, or it can be just fine and you are treated at home. There are some probabilities, some costs and utilities that are associated with the outcomes. The vaccination arm has exactly the same simple structure, just the chances of getting flu are lower, and there are different costs because you have to pay for the vaccination for everyone. I was thinking if one decision node would be, one chance node would be just enough, and that seems too simplistic, so something like this, just 2 chance nodes, seems to work just fine. When I do this in-class activity, I usually let the students work through this problem in a homework so that they're a little bit familiar with the problem. But it's fairly simple. Next thing you need is tape. It's a cheap thing to get. So that you can draw the structure of the tree, of the decision tree on a floor. Then you put some chairs or tables in each chance node and the ultimate outcome, the terminal node. Then you need dice. You can use like classic, cube, but these dice, you can look for them as Dungeons and Dragons dice, and they're like all these different shapes. They're like, I think this one has like 20 sides, some has 4, some has 12, 10. Again, very cheap thing to get on Amazon or elsewhere. So I usually start with a simple, with an illustration of a simple deterministic modeling. So that means that students split into 2 equally sized populations, one for each strategy, vaccination or not. And so let's say I have 20 students here at the beginning, and then I ask them as a group to advance through the tree. So at first, given these probabilities, a quarter will get flu, 3/4 won't. Of those who got the flu, a fifth will get in a hospital, 4/5 will not. And then, they can calculate each of them. So let's say this guy who got flu and got in a hospital has some costs, some utilities. Then they can put it all together, calculate the ICER. And you can show them that if you were to do this again, you would end up with exactly the same result, because this is deterministic modeling. You always split them in 1/4 and 3/4 in the first node, and then in 20% and 80% later. The problem is that students are usually not perfectly divisible. So if you end up with having 17 students, that's bad, but you can still work around to come up with the numbers that actually work, or you can ask the students to pretend that there are maybe 2 more, so that it actually works out. So this is just to illustrate what I hope the students already understand at the moment when we get to this activity. But next step would be let's demonstrate what a micro simulation is, or first order simulation. So you start with all the students at the very beginning, same way. But now the first student gets moved forward to the first chance node and rolls a die. And you give them a probability distribution. So let's say if in this case the outcome is 1, that means the student got flu and advances to the next one. Again, rolls a die. In this case the outcome is 5, so that means no hospitalization. The student ends up in this terminal node. That means there are some costs, some utilities associated with that particular terminal node. And then all of them do that one by one until everyone gets, so if you started with 20 students, you hopefully should have 20 students somewhere at the end. And you can show them that once you introduce this aspect of chance, you don't always end up with the same numbers in the terminal nodes. There's no one in here in the hospital, because in this one trial, just no one, some people got flu, but no one got in the hospital, even though the chance was 5%. So the probabilities are not always perfectly the same you would expect, or the ultimate outcome is not the same as in deterministic modeling. Again, then they can put all the numbers together, calculate the ICER, well, for the total cost, total effectiveness, then the ICER, put it together. Then you repeat the drill, let's say like 5 times, so that you actually get some variation in the cost, in the utilities, in the ICER. And then they can, it's working, not so much. Put all the outcomes in a table. If you have a chance, a nice board, you can plot the outcomes on a board that really conveys the variation that we introduced with the stochastic modeling and shows the uncertainty that is inherent in modeling cost-effectiveness problems. So there are many variations you can actually adapt this activity. First, I talked about deterministic modeling. I talked about first-order simulation, but you can even go further and introduce second-order simulation. That means you can have distributions of the parameters, of the probabilities of the cost of the utilities that will introduce even more variation in the outcomes. You can probably already see that you can set up a similar activity for conveying what a Markov model or Markov process is. And what I noticed when I talked to the students after this activity, be really careful to explain the difference between multiple trials, multiple runs through a simple decision tree and a Markov model. Because those two are very different conceptually. But when students were running around the simple decision tree, some of them thought that they're getting in different health states. And that's not exactly the case. Those were different trials, let's say different universe, and different outcomes of the same problem. So be sure that you distinguish between a simulation on a simple decision tree and a Markov process. I did get some really nice feedback. I didn't check if the student still remembers how probabilistic sensitivity analysis works, but I am hopeful. And I think I'm actually ending on time, so thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi. So my first question is, have you got this on video?
I did not, but I was thinking about it.
And the second thing is
It's fun.
Yeah. Which is the idea, but this is the perfect sort of thing that would be a great resource to share. And if that's something that requires IE to put some resources into someone videoing Michal's session,
Yeah, I'm very expensive.
People have great resources, but we can't rely on everyone to be just providing that to a central website for free. Your own getting into video yourself and all that. So maybe that's something to take forward.
Well, that's something I definitely want to pick up later in general discussions around. There's definitely a movement towards IKEA supporting an online function where we can all share resources, and much of what we've talked about today is absolutely about that ethos of us all sharing resources. So it's something I think we can pick up later as general discussion. But I think having younger kids, you maybe actually make this found that a lot of the methods that we use in early years setting to get kids to understand concepts is they get them to run around the room to the corner. And that's what this reminds me of.
That's actually one thing I wanted to mention, that it helps retention that, it's actually fun to do this. Second, they get to run, so blood flow helps actually, your brain to work. And another benefit of this exercise is that then you have all these dice you can use for the insurance game, right?